So one of the new additions to Season 2 of Diablo 4 seems to be the best way to farm a ridiculous amount of legendary gear pieces. So with Season 2 comes a new open world event called Blood Harvest. Now they're a little bit similar to Hell Tides, but you can farm them from level 1, you can farm them in any world tier. There's always one active on the map, and the currency you're farming within the Blood Harvest to use in the Blood Harvest doesn't go away like the cinders that you would farm in Hell Tides. And one of the main currencies you're going to be farming in these blood harvests are called blood lures. Now blood lures are used to do different activities within the blood harvest itself. So you can go summon these mini bosses called seekers to face those. You can go open up these blood fountains that give you another new currency. So they're primarily used as a resource to farm additional resources within a blood harvest. But there's actually one way to use them that I don't think a lot of people know of yet, and that's to summon 3 actual bosses in the blood harvest zone. So if you go to your map and look at a blood harvest, you'll see this green symbol that's usually somewhere in the center of the zone. Now that's not actually the symbol for the blood harvest, that's actually where you go to summon these bosses. Once you go to this area, there will be these 3 little pillars, and each one of these 3 pillars requires 50 blood lures. This is actually a decent bit of lures until you get your build together and can farm super quickly, so you're not going to be able to farm these bosses super quickly early on, especially if you're solo. But a good part about this is you're in an open world zone and anybody can contribute. So if some random person walks by, they can put 50 in one pillar, you could put 50 in another, and someone else could put 50 in the last, and all 3 of the bosses would summon, and everybody can fight them and get loot. You can also get lucky and just walk by, and the boss will be spawned, and you can go fight them and get the same loot. And this also means that if you have a group of people you play with, this farm is going to be much more effective farming with a group, because you're all getting your own blood lure drops, and you can just combine all your blood lures and summon a lot more bosses than you could solo. And once you summon these bosses, it's pretty simple. You basically just hold off a bunch of waves, then 3 bosses will spawn. You kill all 3 of those bosses and you get a bunch of loot. Now, like I mentioned, this seems to be one of the best ways to get legendary items. And that's because these 3 bosses all drop their own loot and they have guaranteed legendary drops. The first time I did this, I did it on World Tier 2. Every one of these bosses dropped 1 legendary item. But then a little bit higher level, still in World Tier 2, I did these bosses again, and actually every single one of these bosses dropped 3 legendary items still in World Tier 2. I think I got a little bit lucky on that one, but it seems like these bosses are dropping between 1 and 3 legendary items per boss. So if you get 3 from each, you're getting 9 legendary items from these bosses. Now I'm not in World Tier 4 yet, it may change in that, maybe there'll be more in World Tier 4, but even in World Tier 2, this is a ridiculous amount of legendary items. Now one thing I don't know yet is if these can drop uniques, because if these can drop uniques in place of those legendaries, once you get into World Tier 4, these will probably be a good way to farm just random unique items. Because if you're getting 9 legendary drops and every one of those has a small chance to be unique, you have a decent chance to get a unique continually farming these. And what's also really strong about this is since you can do blood harvest in any world tier at any level, you can come here pretty early on, say in World Tier 1 or World Tier 2, you can farm up a bunch of blood lures solo or with a group, you can summon these bosses and very early on get a bunch of legendaries, which will help you progress much quicker, because the legendary aspects early on while leveling are the most important things for your build. If you can get a bunch of just your best legendary aspects on a bunch of your armor pieces and a bunch of your jewelry, you'll be ridiculously strong and you'll be able to progress just much quicker getting into World Tier 3 and World Tier 4. And I think this is probably the most efficient way to use blood lures, because pretty much everything else in the blood harvest you can use blood lures on, you're also getting just by being in the zone. Seekers will randomly seek you out. You'll be getting a ton of potent blood anyway, which are the 2 primary things you use blood lures on besides this boss. So I definitely recommend saving up all your blood lures and just constantly farming this boss anytime you get enough. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.